All right. We are live right here on X, on YouTube, on Rumble, and on Facebook. It's good to see you all. It's extra fun to sit here doing a live stream with you so that we can chat about the things that matter. Before we get started, and do we have a banger of a show for you today? Before we get started, please subscribe to the show. Go to youtube.com/Liz Wheeler. Hit that subscribe button. Hit the bell so we can notify you every time we're live so you don't miss hanging out with me. On Spotify, search The Liz Wheeler Show, hit subscribe, and leave us a 5-star review. I greatly appreciate everybody who's been leaving comments on the individual episodes over there. We have video on Spotify now, so it's been great. I'm your host, Liz Wheeler, and I watched the creepiest, I'm talking chills up and down your arms documentary recently. The absolute creepiest. It was actually a documentary done by TMZ, believe it or not. I'm not particularly into celebrity gossip, so I was a little surprised TMZ produced what I consider to be, it's not gossip at all. It has nothing to do with celebrities. It's not any kind of paparazzi piece. It's actually a quite a well-done piece of investigative journalism about September 11th, 2001. We are now one day ahead of the 24th anniversary of the September 11th, 2001 terrorist attacks. And this documentary came out a couple months ago. I watched it somewhat recently, but the premise of this documentary, this is the title of it: Exposing the 9/11 Cover-Up. TMZ Investigates the Fifth Plane. Now, you and I, of course, know, at least those of us who are older than Gen Z. My youngest sister was born in 2002. She was born after 9/11. So Gen Z, it's kind of a wild concept. Gen Z was not alive during 9/11. They don't have the same emotional connection to it that millennials and generations older do. But we're all pretty familiar with the premise of 9/11. There were 4 planes that were hijacked by al-Qaeda terrorists, radical jihadists. 2 of those planes, commercial airliners in the United States, were hijacked and flown into the World Trade Center's towers in New York City. A 3rd plane hijacked, hit the Pentagon. And the 4th plane that was hijacked, United Flight 93, the passengers realized that the flight was hijacked. Mid-flight, they heard the news that there had been other planes that were hijacked and run into the World Trade Center towers in New York and the Pentagon in Washington, D.C., and they determined that they would not allow their plane to be a weapon against the United States. They didn't know, were they heading towards the Capitol? Were they heading towards the White House? What was their intended target? All they knew is that terrorists had hijacked their plane and they were done for. And so in an incredible act of bravery, they took the plane, they took the plane back from the terrorists as well as they could, meaning they stopped the terrorists from running that plane into the Capitol or the White House. However, they all lost their lives because the plane crashed in a field in Pennsylvania instead of the Capitol. We're pretty familiar with this premise. 4 planes on 9/11 hijacked by al-Qaeda terrorists. But what if I presented evidence to you today that there was actually another plane that was supposed to be hijacked too? And not only was there another plane that had hijackers on it, but the government found out about it afterward. And so did the airlines. They knew about it. And to this day, they're covering it up. Today's episode is sponsored by Cove Pure. How much have you thought about what's in your tap water before you drink it? I confess to you, I used to not care that much about this topic unless it tasted weird. But after reading some pretty shocking studies, I've done a complete 180 on that former position. I now purify my water, and I think you're going to want to join me by using the amazing countertop filtration system. It's called Cove Pure. So these studies that I'm talking about, there's a research paper showing how atrazine, it's a common pesticide, can disrupt hormones in frogs. You remember a couple years ago when Alex Jones did the whole frogs are turning gay thing and people made fun of him? Well, that was actually real. It turns out Alex Jones was right. That chemical is now in your drinking water. Or more specifically, this is what happens when human beings and frogs are impacted by atrazine, the complete feminization and chemical castration. So it's not actually gay frogs, it's trans frogs. Yes, this pesticide is now known to run into drinking water. You see why I'm not taking any risks with my family's water. You can rely on Cove Pure to remove these nasty, dangerous contaminants from your drinking water. Cove Pure filters your water in 4 stages. It's certified to remove up to 99% of impurities. You can choose the temperature you want to. It's a really cool system. So if you like your water cold or you're a tea person, you don't need to wait for the kettle to boil. Just tap a button and you get hot, cold, warm, whatever. Plus, it's got this pitcher that I can easily remove so I don't have to get up to refill my cup every time. Now, there are many cheaper water filters on the market, but these don't filter out the tiniest particles like Cove Pure does. One of these tiny particles that you need a powerful water filter for is fluoride, which the government conveniently adds to the water supply. Now, RFK Jr. understands the science, wants to ban that because it lowers the IQ of children if there's fluoride in our water. The government says fluoride is just for healthy teeth, but then why would they force you to ingest it? Sounds like a vaccine mandate where you don't have a choice at all. The good news is that you do actually have a choice no matter what crap is in your water. Pure drinking water is one of the best investments you can make, and I'm happy to share that Cove Pure is giving my audience a special discount of $200 off if you use my link. It's covepure.com/Liz. That's covepure.com/Liz. covepure.com/Liz. Go get it now. I highly recommend it. Okay, so this new documentary from TMZ investigates United Flight 23, which TMZ provides what I consider to be pretty compelling evidence. And I'm a pretty hard sell. I call myself, what we call ourselves on the Liz Wheeler Show. We're happy skeptics. Takes a lot to convince me that something might be true. And this is pretty compelling evidence. Take a look.
I definitely think Flight 23 was the fifth plane.
4 commercial airliners hijacked on 9/11. Nearly 3,000 people perished. But that's not the end of the story. The crew aboard another plane, United Flight 23, believes they were also targeted.
There's a good chance that somebody was plotting to try to use our airplane as a weapon of mass destruction.
Flight 23 was called back from the runway at JFK. The plane was fully evacuated and locked.
People on the ground saw people running in the aircraft.
The FBI told the crew that night authorities made a shocking discovery.
The first thing they asked me was why the floor hatches were open on the airplane. They had to be opened after everyone had gone off the aircraft.
Something was going on there that should not have been going on.
The FBI was concerned enough to take the crew to a lineup.
The FBI asked us if we could identify any of the people that were behind the window.
There's very little doubt in my mind that United 23 was a fifth airplane.
Okay, so that's just the teaser for it. The pilot and multiple flight attendants on this airline believed they were the fifth plane. So this is not some conspiracy theory that came from, the basement of somebody's mother's home from a distance. This is the pilot of United Flight 23 and the flight attendants. So why did they think that they were the fifth plane? Why did they think that they narrowly missed being hijacked and weaponized and being part of the 9/11 terror attacks? Well, 5 pieces of evidence were presented. The first piece of evidence is on this flight, there were 4 Middle Eastern passengers who had booked first class tickets. One of them was wearing a burqa. Now, a burqa, as you know, is supposed to be an outfit for a woman, a Muslim woman. And yet the flight crew on United Flight 23 said that this Middle Eastern passenger who was wearing a burqa wasn't a woman. Take a look.
My name is Deborah, and I was a purser on Flight 23, September 11th, 2001. I had 4 people board the aircraft in first class. I knew that the people did not eat meat, So I spent a great deal of time trying to get these 4 people fruit plates.
The plane was not full. Relatively few people in business and economy, and only 4 people in first.
It was a taller, well-built gentleman in a tan suit, a young boy about 6 to 7 years old, a woman in a hijab, and a gentleman that appeared to be a type of bodyguard.
My name is Sandy Thorngren. I was a flight attendant on Flight 23 on September 11th, 2001. I was working in the business galley. I had gotten out, walked down the aisleway going up to first class, and I noticed there were 4 people in first class. What struck me at that time was there was a woman wearing a burqa. I figured it was a woman because that's who wears that. The opening of the headdress was very tight, and you could barely see his eyes. I did explain to our purser that I thought that that wasn't a woman, it was actually a man.
I was absolutely convinced it was a man.
Oh, man.
Absolutely.
Oh, man. Can you imagine being on a flight? How would you react? A little honest self-reflection here. How would you react if you were on an airline and there was not only a person in a full burqa, not just a hijab, a full burqa with just the eye slits, but a person with hairy hands, a person that the flight crew were pretty certain was a man? How would you react? How would you react? Well, that so-called bodyguard that was sitting next to this burqa-wearing individual, that man reportedly, according to the flight attendants, was sweating profusely. Sweating profusely, that's also not normal behavior. Well, then the man in the suit sitting next to a small child, a 6 or 7-year-old boy, asked the flight attendants for a very unusual favor. Take a look.
The gentleman in the tan suit, he asked the purser that he show his young son the cockpit, and passengers were just not allowed in the cockpit anymore.
I walked up to first class again, and there was a child with one of the men, and they were just looking into the cockpit.
In first class, we have a choice of meals, but usually only 2 fruit plates. So I was trying to get catering to bring more fruit plates. Trying to do that while people are boarding and getting settled was just a mess.
As the purser was trying to discuss this with the gentleman in the tan suit, he finally said, "It doesn't really matter."
The people that were in first class, they wanted to take off. They didn't want to eat. Our purser was determined that they get food because we had an extra long flight, and nothing on our menu in first class was going to let them eat because she said everything has meat on it. And they were arguing with her that they didn't want to eat. They wanted to take off. They didn't want to eat. And I could hear them say, "We do not want to eat. We don't need food. We want to take off. We don't need food. We just want to go."
So the compelling evidence, and I see the comments that you guys are leaving. Chills are going up and down your arm. So we have 4 Middle Eastern passengers in first class, someone, an individual dressed in a full burqa with just eye slits, who the flight crew, the flight attendants, who I imagine are not easily rattled by weirdos because they work on planes and see all kinds of people and deal with all kinds of different weirdos all the time. They were certain was a man. The person, the man sitting next to the man in the burqa, was sweating profusely. The other man in the tan suit was trying to peer into the cockpit using his son as an excuse, but he was the one who was peering into the cockpit. They said they didn't need food. They didn't want food. They just wanted to take off, as if that's not creepy enough. Once the news broke that the plane was not going to be taken off because the other planes on 9/11 had hit the towers, had hit the Pentagon, these same passengers ask a question of the flight crew that's not a question that probably would have come to your mind or my mind. Take a look at this.
It was organized pandemonium. We eventually got back to the gate, and we told the passengers that the airport was being evacuated. They were to get their belongings and leave immediately. And of course, they didn't need any encouragement.
They opened the door to let everybody out, and as I'm handing out jackets to passengers in the business class, one passenger asked me, did they get the White House? I said, I would have no idea.
We moved the bags out of the way, and there was a little peephole. I looked through, and the airplane was completely empty. All I saw was a United mechanic waiting for me, and when I opened the door, he says, all right, guys, you'll have to get off the airplane. I've been ordered to lock up the airplane. So we did just that.
As we deplaned, we made sure lavatories were clear, every row was clear. There was not a person left on that plane.
So the plane was empty and locked. The airport was being evacuated. No one knew if Kennedy Airport itself would become a target, so people were scrambling. And that's what made an observation from below extremely suspicious.
People on the ground, baggage people or somebody that worked on the ground there, saw people running in the aircraft.
20 minutes after the plane was locked? What?
By this time, the United 23 crew was connecting dots. The person in first class disguised as a woman. The passengers who argued with the flight attendant about taking off quickly without food. The person profusely perspiring in business. The request to enter the cockpit. The reference to terrorists hitting the White House. The two mysterious people who were seen in the cabin after the plane was fully empty and the door locked. There were a lot of dots.
That is so creepy. So creepy. So the way that an aircraft like that one is structured, there are floor hatches up towards the cockpit where aircraft electronics are housed, and you can actually access that from underneath the plane. That's how a lot of the technical crew would access that if they need to address the electronics in any way. Those hatches were closed when the plane was locked and the pilot and the flight crew left. But later on, when that plane was examined, those hatches were open. They were left open because the flight attendants report that they were asked, well, why were the hatches open? And they said, well, they weren't open when we left the plane. So what does that mean? Did someone enter the airplane through the floor hatch to remove, I don't know what, evidence, weapons, after everyone exited the plane? Well, that's not just a hypothetical question. A weapon that had been planted on a plane was found at JFK. I'm going to show you that in just a second. I want to say thank you to another sponsor for today's episode, Kindred Harvest. Every day, millions of Americans like you and like me enjoy a glass of tea. But here's the problem. Most of that tea is contaminated. I'm talking microplastics, heavy metals. And yes, a lot of it comes straight from China. Big Pharma and the Chinese tea industry certainly don't care if it makes you sick. In fact, they benefit when you are sick. Well, Kindred Harvest is your alternative. It's blended and packed right here in the USA. No microplastics, no toxins. Every batch is third-party lab tested. Heat sealed, glue-free, ink-free, just pure all-natural tea. You want morning energy, caffeine-free, evening teas, even clean iced tea for your kids. My husband likes the sleepy time tea. I liked the immunity tea when I was sick, and my 4-year-old daughter she felt really grown up drinking the cinnamon tea. It's non-caffeine, of course. Choose Kindred Harvest. Cultivate goodness daily. Visit kindredharvest.co. Use my promo code Liz for 20% off. That's kindredharvest.co, promo code Liz. You won't regret it. So that hatch that was left open on United Flight 23 after the pilot and the flight crew had exited the plane, locked the plane, they confirmed that the hatch was closed. After people on the ground had seen inside the locked plane 2 suspicious characters walking up and down, well then, on the plane that was at the gate next to United Flight 23, there was a weapon found. Take a look.
After Kennedy Airport was shut down, authorities searched various airplanes, including the one parked next to United 23, another 767 that was not scheduled to take off during that critical time period.
The chief pilot reported to me that they had found box cutters on the airplane, and it was coincidentally just one number off mine. He asked me the tail number of the airplane I was flying, or the nose number we call it. I gave it to him, and he said, well, I just want to let you know that we found 2 box cutters in the seat pockets in first class on the airplane next to it, which was the tail number was 1 digit off. If somebody was on the ground cooperating with them, they just simply made a mistake and put the box cutters on a wrong airplane.
My name is Lynn Spencer. I'm a former airline pilot and a flight instructor and an aviation safety investigator. I'm an author of a book about the air events of September 11th. During my research, it was made very evident to me from the highest levels of our government, members of the FBI, senior federal aviation officials, that there were more than just the 4 planes. They also shared with me some of the items that were found on other airplanes that didn't get off the ground on that day. The items that I was told had been found on planes were box cutters, specifically.
I believe that it's a reasonable assumption to think that those box cutters were meant for my airplane, not the one next to me. You have people that clean the airplane, people that load food on the airplane, that have access to the airplane. If somebody was in cooperation with the group, they could have been put there. There are a host of people that have access to the airplane. It wouldn't be the hardest thing in the world to get on an airplane like that. It's the one thing that makes me think that there's a good chance that somebody was plotting to try to use our airplane as a weapon of mass destruction.
United 23 would have become airborne right about the time of the other hijacked aircraft on September 11th. And there's very little doubt in my mind that United 23 was a 5th airplane.
You guys have to watch the entire documentary. It's on YouTube, actually. It's got over 7 million views at this point, because it would be weird enough, suspicious enough. It would be pretty compelling evidence if just 1 or 2 or 3 of these different things happened on United Flight 23, but for all of them to happen, I mean, the FBI interviewed the crew after that, and the FBI reportedly told the flight attendants that they had 7 of the passengers on their radar. But my question would be, what happened to those passengers? Like, did they ever get arrested? Did they ever face charges? How come we've never heard about them? Were they just let go? Are they still here in the United States? Did the FBI actually interview them? Did they go back? Did they hightail it back to wherever they came from? Like, how chilling is it that we don't know the answer to any of those questions? And the FBI, of course, and I suppose this is probably standard procedure, they didn't update the crew or the public or anybody, conduct what seemed like any follow-up interviews with the crew in the years following. So the crew doesn't know the answers to any of those questions. When TMZ reached out to the FBI in the lead up to the publication of their documentary to ask the FBI for comment, the FBI did not respond to TMZ. But TMZ did ask the 9/11 Commission why they are about interviewing United Flight 23's flight crew. And this is what a member of the 9/11 Commission said about it. This will just rock your world. Take a look at this.
So where did the United 23 passengers go? The ones who aroused suspicion on the part of the flight crew. The FBI told the pilot there were 7 passengers on its radar.
The only thing they really said to me was the fact there were 7 people on the airplane, and then wanted to know everything I did, everything I said, everywhere I went. There were the things I related to them, the gentleman, his wife, and a small baby. The FBI didn't go into any length about the 4 gentlemen on the flight. They simply were described as Arabs. And I'm assuming he meant Saudis, but I think he indicated they were going to be questioned.
As for whether they were questioned, we don't know. The pilot doesn't know. The crew doesn't know. The FBI wasn't telling them. And they certainly weren't telling us. We have requested information about Flight 23. We even filed a Freedom of Information request. We did not get a reply.
Nobody is forthcoming with what I think is a simple statement. No, these were innocent people on the flight. Forget about it. I don't know why that information can't be released. If they were involved, then I could understand why that information isn't being released.
Did the 9/11 Commission ever contact you?
No. No one in the government has contacted me about the event outside of that one interview from the FBI.
The 9/11 Commission was unprecedented in scope and resources, taking nearly 3 years to write a report that was nearly 600 pages long. The staff poured through 500,000 pages of documents and interviewed 1,200 people in 10 countries. Yet United 23 was never mentioned, not even once, in the official report.
I really can't speak to why the 9/11 Commission didn't pursue information on Flight 23. When I looked at what they covered and what they didn't cover, it seemed to me as if when they had something they really couldn't explain, they didn't dig deeper. They just kind of left it alone.
Can I tell you what I did after I watched this documentary? Especially when it got to that part when they said the FBI, they'd filed Freedom of Information Act requests. They'd ask the FBI for comment. They didn't get a response. Can I tell you what I did? As you may know, I have sources placed in influential positions in federal law enforcement, at the FBI, at the Department of Homeland Security, in the intelligence community, and I sent this to them. And I said, can you explain this? Are you going to respond to this? Is this real? Did these passengers, these Arab passengers, did they get interviewed by the FBI? Are there transcripts of those interviews? Do you believe that United Flight 23 was the 5th plane on 9/11? I sent that to the upper echelons of the FBI, because how can you not think that this is a government cover-up? The 9/11 Commission didn't even interview the pilot of that plane, the flight attendants who witnessed. They were the primary sources, is what we call that in journalism. It was the flight attendants who noticed the individual in the burqa with just the slits for the eyes showing and said, that's actually not a woman. We think that's a man. These flight attendants weren't even interviewed by the FBI. A lot can be explained in our government by sheer incompetence of government employees. And I never want to underestimate just the incompetence, just the stupidity, the idiots that work in government. But I don't know if just incompetence explains why you heard in the documentary them detail exactly what type of resources the 9/11 Commission had. How could they have not investigated United Flight 23 unless they didn't want to? United Airlines similarly won't comment on this whatsoever. They have zero comments about this even to this day, which is really weird. It's really, as I said at the beginning, it takes a lot to convince me, because I'm a very happy skeptic. I find this to be pretty compelling, and I want to share with you a report that came out yesterday about, let's just say it poses questions that have not yet been answered about who was actually behind the 9/11 terror attacks. But first, I want to talk to you about our third sponsor for today's show, Relief Band. I was kicking myself last month when I did not wear my Relief Band. We went on a road trip, my family and I, through the Tennessee mountains, up and down and up and down. And let's just say I'm kind of prone to car sickness. I literally posted about this on Instagram complaining that I was car sick. I was so car sick and I was so whiny about it. And I knew if I had I knew you know that feeling when you leave an item somewhere and you're like, well, I forgot it, but I know exactly where it is. I knew if I had worn my Relief Band, I knew where I was sitting in my house, it would have helped relieve the nausea because, man, I don't like to feel nauseous. Relief Band is the original anti-nausea wristband that quickly relieves and effectively prevents nausea and vomiting associated with motion sickness, anxiety, migraines, hangovers, morning sickness, chemotherapy, and so much more. Relief Band is exactly what it sounds like. It is a band you wear on your wrist to give you relief from nausea, and you can change the intensity of the pressure points depending on how you're feeling to make it stronger or weaker. It is 100% drug-free, non-drowsy. It works quickly before or after symptoms start, and it has 0 side effects. Plus, Relief Band's new Premier Plus model provides advanced nausea relief. It includes a digital clock and utilizes smart skin sensing technology to preserve battery life. And listen, Relief Band isn't magic, it's science. Relief Band's technology was originally developed for hospitals before being sold directly to you, the consumer. Relief Band is FDA approved, it's clinically proven, it's recommended by doctors nationwide. So if you want to cure your nausea problem fast, then join us, the hundreds of thousands of people who are nausea-free with Relief Band. Right now, I've got an exclusive offer for you. If you go to reliefband.com and use my promo code Liz, you'll get 20% off plus free shipping. So head to reliefband.com. That's RELIEFBAND.com. Use my promo code Liz for 20% off plus free shipping. So interestingly, investigative reporter Catherine Herridge, who is now independent, she does great work. She's also a sweetheart. She released a report yesterday about questioning the Saudi government's involvement in 9/11. And her report followed 2 employees of the Saudi government who were here in the United States as early as 1998, several years prior to the September 11th, 2001 terror attacks. And in Catherine Herridge's report, she shows these 2 Saudi government employees filming potential terror attack targets in the United States. They were casing it all the way back in June of 1999. I'm talking targets in Washington, D.C., landmarks, some later identified as actual 9/11 targets. These Saudi government employees were also caught on film at a welcome party for one of the 9/11 hijackers after he got to the United States, got to our mainland. So does this mean the Saudi government was involved? I don't know. It definitely challenges the official 9/11 narrative. You could make the argument that, Al-Qaeda was directing these 2 people who just happened to work for the Saudi government. Or you could also make the argument that the Saudi government was giving them directives because they were employees of the Saudi government. Funny how these types of things 24 years later are being uncovered by independent journalists, investigative journalists, when the United States government, you would think, would have resources enough to track down these individuals. Their names, by the way, the 2 employees of the Saudi government, Al Sadhan and Al Sudari. And according to this report by Catherine Herridge, they may have served as an advance team to vet those who would later assist both hijackers. This would move the entire timeline for the 9/11 terror attack back nearly 3 years before the attack. This is paradigm shifting if this is properly investigated and tracked down, if this turns out to be accurate. Was the Saudi government involved in perpetrating 9/11? Well, a spokesman for the Saudi embassy categorically denies the allegations that there was an advance team. and other allegations made in the 9/11 family's lawsuit. But I think it's safe to say the question still lingers in many of our minds. Listen, we have been gaslit for over 2 decades for asking questions about September 11th, 2001. We've been called 9/11 truthers. We've been called denialists. And it is true that there are some conspiracy theories about what actually happened at 9/11, and it's kind of a spectrum. The most extreme conspiracy theories about 9/11, the 9/11 truthers, claim that it was an inside job, that George Bush actually ran those planes into the Twin Towers. Now, I don't think that's true. I doubt you think that's true. I think a very small percentage of people think that's true, but that is what the mainstream media and the left and the neocons on the right, that's how they try to portray us when we ask questions that are totally rational, totally logical, totally evidence-based questions, based on the evidence such as that presented in the TMZ documentary. They try to portray questions like, oh, there were 2 Saudi government officials who were taking video of what turned out to be the 9/11 targets, and they were caught on camera at the welcome party for the 9/11 hijackers. Does that mean the Saudi government was involved? They try to portray that question based on evidence, perfectly reasonable question, as being in the same category as making the wild and crackpot accusation that George Bush himself flew those planes into the Twin Towers. Let me just tell you, if one positive outcome from the COVID pandemic that was imposed on us, there was one silver lining to that cloud, it's that it freed us. It not only freed us on platforms like X, quite literally, from the thought police and the speech police, thanks to Elon Musk. We can say whatever we want on X. And because of that, independent journalists and commentators are actually able to expose corruption for the first time. We're not subject to the gatekeeping and the propagandizing of the mainstream media and both parties in the United States government. But it's also freed us to question the experts. We, the American people, are now on equal standing with the so-called experts. We're not dismissed because, oh, what do you know? You don't have a PhD. You're not a United States senator. You little peon. Go back with the masses of nasty people. We actually have the power now because we have taken it back from the experts, also known as the technocracy class. We've taken that back to ask questions. The other question that I have about September 11th, 2001 is what exactly the Bush administration knew about the attack before the attack happened. On August 6th, 2001, just shy of 1 month before the September 11th, 2001 terror attacks, then National Security Advisor Condoleezza Rice, she served as the NSA to George W. Bush, she took part in a presidential daily brief. That's the intelligence community's brief to the president on a daily basis. And on August 6, 2001, the presidential daily brief was titled, quote, Bin Laden determined to strike in the U.S. Now, you remember, of course, that bin Laden had tried to bomb the Twin Towers. He had actually bombed them, not to the extent that he wanted in the early 1990s, but he had bombed them previously. Well, according to the declassified version of that August 6th presidential daily brief called Bin Laden Determined to Strike in the U.S., the Bush administration had been warned about Osama bin Laden's intent to attack the United States, which was believable because he already had attacked the United States. He had issued a fatwa back in 1998 against American citizens. He had attacked the U.S. Embassy in 1998. And this presidential daily brief indicated that Al-Qaeda was engaging in, quote, patterns of suspicious activity in this country, the United States, consistent with preparations for hijackings or other types of attacks. This presidential daily brief mentioned intelligence from 3 months prior to that, May of 2001, suggesting that bin Laden supporters were planning attacks in the United States with explosives. In other words, the Bush administration, a month prior to 9/11, was told Osama bin Laden is going to attack the United States and he's going to hijack airliners to do so. And what did the Bush administration do? Well, according to her testimony to the 9/11 Commission, former National Security Advisor Condoleezza Rice said it was too vague of information. We did nothing because it wasn't actionable. You were told a specific terrorist, Osama bin Laden, and his specific terror group, Al-Qaeda, specifically wanted to attack the U.S. homeland in a specific way, hijacking commercial jetliners and flying them into specific targets, landmarks of the United States. What more information do you need to try to stop such an attack? Do you need them to text you a time and a date? Do you need them to send you a Google Calendar invite so that you have advance notice and you can click maybe I'll attend? The FBI had been aware prior to 9/11, and this was also included in that August 6th presidential daily briefing. The FBI had also been aware of, quote, suspicious activity related to potential hijackings, including surveillance of buildings in New York, government buildings in New York. Bin Laden was known. He had always had an obsession with using aircraft, commercial jetliners as weapons. And yet Condoleezza Rice was too vague. We didn't have any dates. There was nothing that we could have acted on. You tell me, is that incompetence? Is that negligence? Or is it more? We are still recovering as a nation from 9/11. No, I'm not talking about the physical buildings in New York or in Washington, D.C. I'm talking about the implications of what happened politically as a result of 9/11. After 9/11, we saw a surge in forever wars. We invaded Afghanistan. We then invaded Iraq using the political capital from 9/11 as justification. We were dragged into wars that spanned over 20 years. The rise of the neocon happened as a result, well, of Dick Cheney and George Bush. We were also dragged into an intelligence community that was weaponized against us thanks to the political actions that were taken on the heels of 9/11 when people were fearful. Our countrymen had been killed, brutally murdered in a terror attack. And the intelligence community used that. They exploited our fear to say, if you want us to prevent that from happening again, you will let us violate the very core of your privacy and your liberty. We will spy on you. Otherwise, you too will go down in a jetliner. And in was ushered the era of intelligence community abuse. Forever wars, intel abuse. It was also the first experience we had with being told that observing reality was hate speech. Oh, you noticed that the hijackers weren't just your run-of-the-mill Midwestern white man. You noticed that they were from the Middle East. You noticed that they were Muslim. You noticed that they committed this attack in the name of their Islamic jihadist beliefs. And even Barack Obama wouldn't say the word radical Islamist. Why? Because we were told it was Islamophobic. Muslims around the world might be bullied for that or stigmatized for it. 2.5 decades later, we are only just beginning to recover from these things that were imposed on us as a result of the 9/11 attacks. And these things that were imposed on us as a result of the 9/11 attacks were not things that were done by the terrorists, but by politicians in our own country. We learned, too, that the Department of Defense, the intelligence communities, the CIA, the FBI, neocon politicians in general, they come to the table with a preconceived outcome. And they cherry pick evidence and justification for what they already want to do. It's like, it's the equivalence of bad science, where a scientist comes in and says, I've already decided that something is safe. Now I'm just going to conduct a study that substantiates the view that I want you to think. That's what we saw our politicians do. Think about Iraq. According to journalist Molly Hemingway, we invaded Iraq because of what? Because of this allegation that Saddam Hussein had weapons of mass destruction. Well, what intelligence was used to substantiate such an allegation? Well, it turns out, and we the American people certainly weren't told this at the time, It turns out that the accusation that Saddam Hussein had weapons of mass destruction came from one person, one Iraqi, who had no evidence of this, no proof, but he did have a vendetta against Saddam Hussein, who had killed his brother-in-law. This was the justification for invading Iraq? Well, because the neocons, the politicians, want the defense contractors, those who profit from forever wars, wanted to invade Iraq, and they were looking for a reason. It was a fishing expedition. Again, we are just now beginning to recover. Our country is just beginning to recover from the implications of what happened as a result of 9/11. The intelligence community does the same thing. They rely on faulty information. We just saw this. Think about the story that we covered a month ago. After Tulsi Gabbard revealed, DNI Tulsi Gabbard revealed that the intelligence assessment following the 2016 election of Donald Trump as president, this intelligence community assessment that Vladimir Putin and the Russians favored Donald Trump and tried to meddle in the elections in order to help Trump defeat Hillary Clinton, that was manufactured by Barack Obama and by John Brennan and by James Comey and by all the rest of those high-ranking Obama administration officials. It was never true. And they picked information, unreliable, faulty information from the gutter in order to make it appear that their preconceived political agenda looked like it was based in facts. None of this would have happened in our country had not the stage been set by 9/11. Don't forget, Dick Cheney, who was George Bush's vice president, was the CEO of Halliburton. And then he was the vice president. And guess who was granted substantial U.S. government contracts for the wars in Afghanistan and Iraq? Yeah, that's right, Halliburton. You want to talk conflict of interest in the highest order. So yeah, we're going to ask questions on the 24th, at the eve of the 24th anniversary of 9/11. You bet we're going to ask questions. I highly recommend that you go. It's on YouTube. We can even post the link in the description of this video. Go watch TMZ's investigative report on the fifth plane. Was there a fifth plane on 9/11 that the government to this day is trying to cover up? Compelling evidence says, yes, there was. Now, I want to take a moment to thank you for watching and listening to this show. It's because of you that we're able to keep producing content like this. Blaze TV exists because people like you refuse to settle for watered down coverage, endless spin, clickbait headlines, or the experts propagandizing us. Blaze TV has never been about one voice or one company. It is about a movement of people, us, who refuse to sit on the sidelines. We want to take action. We want to be part of our own self-governance. This is how we do it. This is why Blaze TV matters so much. By subscribing, you are standing shoulder to shoulder with a community that believes America is worth fighting for. Blaze Media only exists because people like you step up and join us and help drive this mission forward. When you subscribe, you're not just supporting a show, you're making your voice count. You're ensuring that truth has a platform today, tomorrow, and for the next generation. Join Blaze TV today at blazetv.com/Liz and get $20 off right now. For as low as $8 a month on the annual plan, you can be part of shaping the future. That's blazetv.com/Liz. Make sure you're subscribed on YouTube as well. YouTube.com/Liz Wheeler on X. At X.com/Liz_Wheeler on Spotify. We have video now. Go to Spotify and search The Liz Wheeler Show. Hit subscribe and leave us a 5-star review. I greatly appreciate each and every one of you. Thank you for watching today. Thank you for listening. I'm Liz Wheeler. This is The Liz Wheeler Show.